What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the PS6. Not something I thought we would talk about so early in 2025, but here we are. And the reason why it's actually so surprising, for a while, I think 2028 was that year that was preached to us, that was found in court documents. It felt like 2028 was going to be the year of probably both of the consoles, Xbox, PlayStation. But then as time has moved on, it very much seems like Microsoft's next Xbox is 2027. Well, now we have from a person that specializes in hardware. They're not out there talking about every game under the sun, but they have gotten some stuff right, I think, with the PS5 Pro and specs, right? Hardware, specs, things like that. They say that kind of the base version of the PS6 is already complete. Like, generally what the thing is going to be has been locked in. And when these things normally happen historically, the system is around 2 or so years following it, okay? So from like the background, when they're doing the production stuff that this person claims they're doing right now, then the system should come out so fall of 2027. And that's the story, okay? Now, I just want to spend the next couple minutes kind of venting a little bit, kind of going off. But look, okay, new console is always time. It should be time for celebration. It should be time. It feels like an event because you just do not have consoles that come out every day, every week. These things come out every 7 to 8 years, okay? I will say 2027 did kind of surprise me because, again, for a long time we've heard 2028, and it felt like this console generation was going to last 8 years instead of 7. I'm not super opposed to generations lasting shorter versus longer for the simple fact of kind of like getting to the next big thing. You could also say from the power perspective, right? Technology moves faster now than it did back in the PS3 360 era. These things become more outdated faster than they did back then. So that's probably the driving point why you do want to get consoles out faster, why there's been PS4 Pros, PS5 Pros, right? I get that. I understand kind of the reasoning behind it. Now, in terms of my defense, that's kind of where it ends, because I will say if this thing comes out in 2027, we are rapidly exiting I'm only going to be talking about PlayStation, even though it's technically both of them, but because we're talking about PS6, I'll stick with PlayStation. We are rapidly ending one of the worst eras, I think, for PlayStation that we've gotten in a while. Look, I have a PS5. I got it day one. I love PlayStation. I've had a PlayStation a long time. I'm just not shy to kind of call them out and also praise them when it needs to happen. This is quite the generation we've had. They have wasted time. They've wasted studios' time with the live service stuff to then cancel half of them. We haven't had, I think, like the definitive game of the console yet. In the first 3-4 years, we struggled to even keep games off the PS4, right? You had to support the PS4, so the PS5 never really had anything like. I mean, the biggest things in the first couple years were like Returnal and Ratchet and Clank, which are both actually phenomenal games and some of the best the PS5 has. But I don't know, like when you put that up against the PS4, PS3, don't even try. PS3's got a lot of excellent PS3 exclusives. It just doesn't hold up. Okay, so that's really, I think, where my frustration comes from, especially being one, by the way, not to pat myself on the back, but I will. I long said a while ago that we need to drop the support for the last gen stuff. We're holding back this current gen. And that's without the live service stuff. That's without anything else that Jim Ryan or anybody at PlayStation thought to experiment with in the past 5 years. That's completely separate, but that is technically there, right? I just feel like, I don't know, this would be one of the weaker generations we've ever had, and it would be over so quickly. You then also have to kind of put in, or at least I do, I put in perspective, okay, well, I mentioned, like Bend and Bluepoint, right? They generally skipped the whole thing. Bend did skip the whole thing. Bluepoint did Demon's Souls as a launch title and then just disappeared for the rest of it, right? Naughty Dog, what is their Naughty Dog, one of, if not the best of the majority of people out there, right? PlayStation Studios, I don't think that, by the way, but most people do. When does Intergalactic come out? Does that come out in 2027? Like a Last of Us situation for PS3, and then this happens for PS5? I don't know, but you see what I'm saying? It is exciting. Okay, I will always be excited for a new generation of hardware. I'm gonna get it day one. Like some things are just guaranteed in life, but again, I think you need to also look at it and say, look, we can have some fun. I can be critical. I can also praise things and get excited for things. I just think, like, what happened? What have for both. For both, truly, but specifically for PlayStation, I think it had a pretty weak generation so far. And you could say, okay, well, Alex, and I've said this before, some of the better PS3 things were in the second half. They turned on the turbo button, whatever you want to say. They went for it, that second half of the PS3. PS4 was kind of consistent, I would say, roughly the whole time, but, PS3 specifically second half. But what second half? We're in 2025. We have Ghost of Yotei. That's a big one for sure. But we're still waiting on Wolverine. You have Cory Barlog's game taking forever. You're probably not going to get another God of War out of that. You got Blue Point and Ben just sitting there. You have Naughty Dog just doing remasters of The Last of Us. And yeah, they're working on a new game, but does that actually make it on PS5? Otherwise, largely, they have skipped the entire generation as well. Do you want to keep going? You want to talk about Media Molecule shutting down Dreams and kind of being like, oh, are they even going to survive? By the way, it's not me hating on it. I like every game I think I just mentioned. I like all those games. I actually really like Dreams. I bought it day one, but it's just this is the situation that we're in. We had such a long period of time where we were reluctant as an industry to drop the last gen version to focus just on PS5, and then once that happened, finally, then we just haven't had much, and it's been more waiting. It's been experiments with live service stuff that hasn't really worked out. It's not. I don't really know if there's many people that would disagree, except for like fanboys of either side, which you kind of just discount them immediately. It's just not been strong enough, and I don't know. I'll be excited for the PS6. I think better days are probably ahead for PlayStation than behind. It's been a rough stretch, and I don't think that it can't continue because I don't think they could allow it to continue. I think, in the next 2-3 years, you might get a lot of stuff. But the thing is, and this kind of goes to the more like surreal feeling that I've talked about before. When you see some of these games at the Game Awards and Summer Game Fest and stuff, and you say, oh, that's like 3-4 years away. That's a next-gen title. Like, it's crazy how fast time and how older, we're all getting. But, you know what I mean? Like, when we see these games, when you see Cory Barlog's game, unless it's a surprise, like it's coming out, half a year after, it's like, oh, well, that looks cool. And it's, maybe it's 2 years out. That's a PS6 launch title. You know what I mean? It's crazy that a lot of these games, especially this year, 2025, games that you look at that you think are a while out, they're on the PS6 and the next Xbox. Now, they'll probably also be on PS5, but again, because at that point, now we should be moving on to PS6, and now we're supporting the PS5 that we should have supported this whole time, but we weren't focused on that. You know what I mean? It really kind of rolls in, and that was my main argument with the early stuff. I complained about some of the earlier games being on both because that's kind of how I looked at it, right? If we're so focused on PS4, by the time we get to PS5 and focus on it, you're going to be pitching us the PS6. You're going to want us to spend $500-$600, and then you're going to support the PS5. But you just made us pay $600 to the PS6. And this is how these companies get us. And I mean, I guess I'm the sucker because I do it anyway, but at least I call it out. At least I know what they're actually trying to do. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation. We'll see. It is just a report, but Xbox seemingly is locked into 2027. I think when we talked about that, a few weeks ago, it has happened. Like Xbox 360 beat PS3, right? In terms of coming out. But for the most part, they come out in the last 2 generations, they've come out like a week apart. We're not used to consoles taking a year apart. Like, what would the world be like if Xbox comes out with their system in the fall of 27 and then PS6 doesn't come out to the fall of 28? I feel like the industry wouldn't even be ready for that, right? Because how do you support the Xbox, but you also have to do PS5 and you can't, you know what I mean? And then the PS6 comes in a year later. I just feel like the industry couldn't do that, and maybe that's a reason why. But also us as consumers, I think it would just kind of be weird to have one console so clearly on the next gen and you're waiting on the other one. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's going to happen. So all that long story short, if Xbox is coming out fall of 27, I think PlayStation would try to do, whether they're competing against each other or just because it's been 7 years and they think 7 years is good enough, that's when it's going to happen. So I'm going to change it. In my mind, I am expecting, 2.5 years from now, whatever, the next consoles are coming out. And again, there's a part of me that gets very excited for that. It would be the second major one that I've been able to cover on the channel. And, that's cool. That's cool for me. But also there's a lot of frustration, that comes with that as well. So we'll see. We'll see as we get closer. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon's turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.